the edge of a mist-shrouded forest, where oaks, centuries old, tangled their roots beneath loamy soil, stood a silent lake. By daylight it appeared unremarkable, smooth as mirror glass, bordered by reeds and heather. But when the moon rose, countless silvery ripples danced across its surface, as if the water had awakened. The Celts, who settled in the surrounding hills, believed this body of water was sacred, an earthly reflection of the heaven. In their lore, it was said that on rare nights, a presence descended into the lake, an ethereal figure who walked along the surface without disturbing its tranquility. Those wise in the ways of the old gods spoke of her as a lunar goddess, a guardian of the boundaries between this realm and the other world. At the heart of these whisperings was a prophecy that this deity would one day forge a blade from moonlight itself, tempered in the waters of the Silver Lake. This blade would be no mere weapon, but a fated tool of cosmic balance, capable of safeguarding the land against darkness. The local druids, guardians of sacred knowledge, kept the old verse that told how the forging must happen when the moon was at her fullest and the lake perfectly still, reflecting every shimmer of lunar light. Generations of bards sang of that coming night, weaving tales of heroism and divine wonder. And so, year after year, these watchers of the moon would wait, scanning the sky for a signal that a goddess had chosen their shores for her sacred labor. On the summer solstice, the longest day gave way to a balmy dusk. Forest animals quieted, sensing a shifting in the atmosphere. Something subtle threaded itself through the cedar-scented air, weaving a tapestry of expectancy. Dew clung to the tips of fern leaves, shimmering like miniature moons in the hushed twilight. The faintest breeze drifted across the lake's surface. Beyond the shoreline, watching from behind the shelter of oak trees, was a young druid named Airless, her staff of hazel carved with runic symbols. Although she had spent every solstice near this lake since her initiation, the vibrancy in the air this night was different. She placed her palm against the weathered bark of an oak, closed her eyes, and felt an ancient resonance pulsing in her bones. Somewhere beyond her senses, an ancestral promise was coming to life. As the moon rose above a ring of wispy clouds, its face seemed resplendent, larger than any Airless had witnessed before. Soft beams fell upon the lake, turning it to a sheet of purest silver. The ripples vanished. The surface became so pristine that the sky, stars, and moon all found their reflections upon the waters. Soft, almost imperceptible music like a harp played by unseen hands drifted across the reeds. Airless parted the branches and stepped forward until she reached the water's edge. She felt no fear, only a sense of profound awe guided her, as though the forest itself nudged her onward. The air shimmered. A figure emerged, walking across the lake. She bore a mantle of glimmering fabric, as if woven from the moon's mists. Curves of luminescent metal coiled around her arms, and her eyes shone with the pale, iridescent glow that belongs only to celestial beings. Her hair, long and flowing, appeared almost silver, not the dull hue of age, but rather the shining reflection of the moonlight. With each step, the lake gave a gentle ripple, but did not part beneath her. Elise dared not avert her gaze. She could scarcely breathe, overwhelmed by the goddess's presence. Without speaking, the druid felt an urgent call to witness, to stand in vigil for the forging that was to come. A slender craft, seemingly made of moonlight condensed into physical form, took shape in the goddess's hand. It was no ordinary instrument. Even as Airless watched, the half-formed blade flickered as though it were a candle flame in the wind. Each pass of the goddess's hand shaped it further, stretching the blade, refining its edges. Sparks of silver and pale opalescence fell like dappled starlight onto the water. In that silent moment, it became clear to Airless that she was witnessing the forging of prophecy, the forging of the fabled blade destined to keep darkness at bay. But forging a blade from moonlight was no simple feat. The goddess halted mid-motion, her brow furrowed, as if some aspect of the forging challenged even her divine nature. A swirl of clouds drifted over the moon, dimming its glow. In that half-shadow, the silver lake took on a more somber tone, and the blade in the goddess's hand flickered uncertainly. The wind stirred and carried with it hushed voices, urging the goddess onward. Words that were ancient, in a tongue Aeolus had only glimpsed in old rites, but she felt them, drawn into her mind like a gentle stream. Something was incomplete. The forging required not only divine power, but also a mortal heart's sincerity to bless the blade. Ailey sensed the need and stepped forward. At first, she hesitated. Who was she to approach a goddess in her most sacred moment? Yet the presence of the deity felt inviting, as if her every breath whispered, "Come." The young druid placed one foot onto the surface of the lake, expecting the water to swallow her. Instead, it welcomed her, solid under her weight. Step by cautious step, she advanced toward the goddess. The atmosphere around them seemed to hold its breath, and time stretched so thin that even starlight appeared motionless in the sky. When Aeolus reached her, the goddess spoke, not with an audible voice, but in a silent language of the soul. She guided the druid's hand to the base of the blade where the hilt should be. Aeolus felt a wave of energy surging through her, as if the lake, the moon, and the goddess were all coursing through her veins. The mortal and the divine worked in concert, hammering and shaping the blade through sheer will. The sound of metal striking metal, the forging process rang out across the lake, the notes echoing in the distant hills. Amid this cosmic chime, Aeolus glimpsed visions. She saw the blade used in ages to come, guarding sleeping kingdoms against creeping shadows. She felt the gratitude of future generations, who might live in peace because of its power. And as each strike rang out, she sensed the goddess's own doubts and burdens. The goddess, though celestial, was intimately bound to the cycles of the land and the life that thrived upon it. It wasn't out of impartial detachment that she forged this sacred weapon. She did so to honor creation's fragile balance. As the forging neared completion, the clouds overhead parted, flooding the lake with brilliant moonbeams. The blade's glow solidified, taking on a radiant edge that curved like a crescent. Its hilt formed from strands of congealed moonlight, braided neatly around a core of silver. The final spark flew from the goddess's hand as she etched an inscription along the blade's length, an ancient binding that tied its power to the cycles of night and day. Then a hush fell upon everything. The goddess, the druid, the wind, the lake. Time seemed to gather in one final breath before releasing that hush as a faint sigh, as if the world itself had exhaled in relief. Aeolus cradled the blade for a moment, feeling its weight, yet firm, cold yet pulsing with life. The goddess stepped back, her luminous eyes meeting the druid's, and a silent gratitude passed between them. The forging was complete. In that quiet exchange, Aeolus understood she was never meant to keep the blade. Her role was to witness the birth of a legend, playing the part that mortal devotion so often plays, providing heart, purpose, and faith. She would sing of it, so that the memory of this night might be woven into every bard's song and every druid's litany for ages to come. The goddess then placed her hand gently atop Aeolus's head. A surge of warmth and tears accompanied that touch. Visions flooded in, glades drenched in moonlight, ancient stone circles thrumming with energy, battles fought and won in the twilight, and sorrowful nights when hope was kindled by the faintest glimmer of the moon. Aeolus swore silently to preserve these images and share them. Mortals often forget, but druids must remember. That was the vow. Softly the goddess vanished into the moon's gleam, dissolving like mist into the horizon. The water under Aeolus's feet rippled once more, and she made her way carefully back to solid ground. The moment her boot touched the damp grass of the shoreline, a mingled wave of triumph and humility washed over her. She sank to her knees, pressing her palms into the earth. The warbling cry of a night-bird reminded her that the world still turned. Somewhere beyond the forest, A new day would dawn, but for this one enchanted night, the boundary separating the immortal realm from the mortal plane had worn thin. In the weeks that followed the forging, Aeolus shared her story with her fellow druids. They listened with rapt attention, eyes widening at each detail. Some believed her immediately, trusting in their flock's most intuitive seer. Others wanted proof, but the goddess had left no physical trace beyond the memory of the forging. Rumours began migrating through the villages, travelling in the songs of bards, in the whisper of travelling merchants, and in the stories mothers told their children at bedtime. And so the Silver Lake became a hallowed site where pilgrims came to pray or to hope for a glimpse of the goddess who had woven a blade from moonlight. Young warriors, enamoured by tales of cosmic weaponry, sometimes came to test their mettle. They would stand waist-deep in the lake, brandishing their steel swords, expecting some sign that they might be deemed worthy to wield the moon's dagger. But the water remained as it was, still, mysterious, and reflecting only sky and silver. Even so, the warriors left with hearts lightened, as if the tranquil waters had cleansed them of the thirst for glory. The local druids recognized that even the lake's silence served a purpose, teaching humility. Perhaps the goddess had sealed her blade in the other world to be summoned only in times of dire need. Many nightfalls later, as the harvest season approached, Aeolus was gathering herbs near the same forest. She felt drawn once again to the lake. Though nothing quite as miraculous as the forging had recurred, the memory still warmed her soul. She neared the clearing and found a group of villagers kneeling on the banks, looking distraught. Their anxious whispers reached her ears. A wave of disease had swept through the fields, infecting both livestock and crops. The harvest was at risk, and famine loomed. With winter approaching, even a few days of diseased crops could be catastrophic. The villagers beseeched the goddess for salvation. Already the local druids had tried every remedy known to them, potions, rituals, prayers. Nothing had halted the blight. Aeolus approached, her mind turning to the memory of that luminous blade. She recalled the vow. The blade was forged to protect the land from darkness. What greater darkness might exist than the creeping despair of famine? She closed her eyes, focusing on the image of gleaming metal and the goddess's celestial presence. Perhaps the forging had left behind more than just a story. Perhaps there was a lingering energy that could be invoked. One crisp evening, under the waxing gibbous moon, Aeolus gathered with her druidic circle around the lake. She knelt at the shoreline in silent communion, guiding the circle through a complex chant. Their voices rose in resonance with the croaking of frogs, the gentle lap of water, and the night breeze. One by one, the druids cast offerings into the lake. Silver tokens, fragrant herbs, crystals said to capture moonbeams. With careful intonation, Aeolus called upon the memory of the forging, conjuring the goddess's presence in her heart. A hush descended. Under the moon's wan light, the silver surface shimmered with a faint luminescence, as if responding to their pleas. From among the subtle waves, a silhouette formed. A distant echo of the goddess. Aeolus gasped. Though translucent and wavering, the figure fixed its radiant gaze upon the circle. Quiet though she was, the druid felt a silent reassurance. Then, like a whisper from the depths of a dream, the ephemeral vision raised her palm. For an instant, Aeolus discerned the glint of the moon-forged blade floating in the reflection. A single bright beam of light fell from the moon to the figure's upraised hand, reflecting across the water's surface and shimmering onto the druid. In that instant, something stirred in the atmosphere like the hush before a cleansing rain. A gentle wind swirled around them, carrying the sweet scent of heather. When the reflection finally dimmed and melted back into the rippling waters, the circle found themselves bathed in a renewed sense of possibility. It was not a dramatic display of lightning or thunder, but an infusion of quiet hope. The following days confirmed the effect. The fields gradually recovered. Over time, the diseased leaves began to show signs of healing, and new sprouts pushed through the soil, vibrant and green. Livestock regained their strength. Though some damage had been done, the immediate threat of famine lifted. The community praised the goddess and the blade she had forged. Recognizing that its protective power extended beyond the violence of war, it safeguarded life against all forms of darkness. As the seasons turned, the legend of that lunar forging spread beyond the druidic circles. Traveling bards and storytellers carried it across the seas, weaving it into Celtic tales of gods, beasts, and heroes. Kings in distant lands heard rumors that somewhere in the ancient forests a divine weapon lay hidden. Some dispatched scouts and knights, eager to claim such a prize for their own. Yet, despite vigorous searching, none ever found a physical relic. But they found Airless, now advanced in wisdom, her hair touched by silver. She welcomed them with patience and humility, offering the same story of a blade forged of moonbeams and a goddess's breath. Most left disappointed, failing to understand that what they were chasing was both real and intangible. A weapon tied not to a single realm, but to the cosmic interplay of light and dark. One chilly autumn night, Airless sat near a peat fire in a cottage by the lake, sharing a warm meal with traveling druids. Conversation turned to the question of whether the goddess might ever forge a second blade, or if the forging could be undone. Airless closed her eyes, remembering how each strum of power had resonated through her being on that fateful night. She recalled the swirl of silver sparks, the hush in the air, and the silent vow she had carried with her. "If necessity demands it," she said quietly, "the moon will reflect her light again." The traveling druids nodded in agreement, understanding that the old gods move in spirals of creation and destruction, forging new wonders or reawakening old powers when the world needs them. On subsequent nights, the villagers continued to gather by the shore, paying tribute not to a looming calamity, but to the cycle of hope. Harvest festivals took on a new aspect, blending their usual singing and dancing with a ritual that involved lighting small lanterns around the lake. When the moon touched the water, each lantern's reflection merged with starlight, as if illuminating a path for the goddess. Children released paper boats carrying flowers and seeds, believing that these offerings would ensure bountiful harvests and protection through the dark half of the year. The Silver Lake, once a simple body of water in the forest, grew to become a threshold between mortal supplication and divine generosity. In time, a young acolyte, Ayla, approached Erlis, eyes gleaming with curiosity. She had heard the story of the moon-forged blade countless times, how it shimmered in the goddess's hands, how Erlis had helped shape it, how it was sealed away unseen. Ayla asked if the blade could be harnessed by mortals to drive away evil from neighboring lands. She spoke of warlords haunting the western territories and raiders who pillaged from the coastal villages. Could the goddess's blade be summoned to bring about peace? Airless appreciated the fervor of youth, but gently reminded her that the gods' gifts are multifaceted, never simply a tool to fulfill mortal ambitions. The forging had been an act of cosmic equilibrium, intended to maintain the delicate balance of the world. If mortals sought to use it for conquest, they would betray its purpose. Undeterred by this warning, Isla pressed on, explaining how she wished not to conquer but to protect. Compassion radiated from her like a warm flame. She insisted that if there were a means to call upon the blade in a righteous cause, she would do so only to save lives. Touched by Isla's earnestness, Airless found herself recalling that quiet moment when she had stood upon the water, forging the blade with the god. She recognized a spark in Isla, akin to her younger self, a determination guided by pure devotion. So Airless agreed to guide the acolyte in an invocation ceremony by the lake. The night they chose was one of the half-moon, neither full nor new, a delicate bridge between waxing and waning. Sometimes, in moments of balance, the hidden powers show themselves. They gathered in a small circle, just the two of them, plus the hush of twilight. They recited ancient hymns to the moon and the land, calling upon water, wind, and the watchful spirits of the forest. A quiet stillness followed. Moonlight rippled on the lake's surface, and for a moment, the hush felt as though it might birth a miracle. When Isla stepped to the lake's edge and held out her hands, her breath caught. Was it possible that the moonlight condensed into a faint shape across the water, forming a blade's silhouette? But an unexpected wind rustled the oaks, sending leaves drifting onto the lake. The silhouette faded. The surface rippled, scattering the reflection. Isla's shoulders sagged in disappointment. Alice came to her side and placed a reassuring hand on her arm. "If the goddess wills it," she whispered, "it will be done. Sometimes the forging is about more than just one person's desire, no matter how noble." Though Isla did not receive the blade that night, she felt a renewed commitment to embody its virtues: courage, compassion, and protection of the weak. Over the years, she journeyed to far-off corners of the land to help villagers, using her budding druidic skills to heal the wounded and communicate with the spirits of place. Words of her good deeds spread, and she saved many from sickness and despair, as the meagre resources of her travelling band often worked small wonders. Never once did she speak with bitterness about failing to summon the lunar blade. Rather, she carried with her the understanding that its essence guided her in all she did, an invisible presence urging her to be the mortal reflection of divine mercy. And so, the power of that fabled forging continued reverberating across time and space, carried in the hearts of the faithful. Quiet nights at the Silver Lake were never quite the same after that luminous blade was shaped from moonbeams. People who stood by its shore after nightfall claimed to sense something more profound beneath the ripples, as though the water concealed a hidden realm of bright shadows. In times of trial, the memory of that forging reminded them that behind every clouded sky, the moon still shone. Behind every winter, the spring waited. When shadows seemed poised to overwhelm them, the story of that moon-forged blade affirmed that in the cosmic dance of dark and light, hope had a tangible place. It remains a tale that the Celts whisper among oak groves and stone circles, where the moon's silver beams adorn ancient altars. Even now, travellers speak of a goddess who walks across a lake, reflecting the glow of midnight, forging cosmic metal with her divine hands. They tell of a mortal druid who stood alongside her, hammering the blade until it sparkled like starlight, embedded with purpose. Some say the blade still exists, hidden behind the moon's face, ready to materialize when the world needs its radiance again. Others say that each time a brave soul rises to protect the vulnerable, the blade's spirit awakens, guiding mortal arms with celestial precision. What remains undisputed is this: the forging was born of a union between cosmic power and mortal devotion, binding the destiny of humankind with the cycles of moon and tide. Across the centuries, bards have recited this story in torchlit halls, painting images of a shimmering goddess, a brave druid, and a lake aflame with moonlight. Ordinary folk have gleaned comfort in the notion that, while mortal hearts may be frail, the ancient powers that watch over them thrive on their sincerity and courage. Each new generation finds renewed relevance in this old tale, because it reminds them that there is, and always shall be, hope, even in the darkest hour of night. And so, the memory of the moon-forged blade endures, glimmering in the hidden corners of the Celtic landscape. It lingers in the hush of twilight when the moon climbs the sky, in the silent watch of the forest creatures, and in the hush of the lake that has mirrored countless nights. This forgiving body of water, its surface moonlit, its depths mysterious, stands as a testament to an extraordinary event when mortal hands once joined with a goddess's will to shape something more durable than mere metal. A promise that the luminous bond between gods and humanity can never truly be broken.